In February 2025, tensions in Eastern Europe just took a dramatic new turn. Russia has made incredibly serious accusations against Ukraine, claiming to have stopped a targeted assassination attempt against a high-profile individual. This isn't just another diplomatic spat. If these allegations are true, it represents a massive escalation in an already brutal conflict. But if they're fabricated, it's a sophisticated information operation designed to manipulate international opinion. So what really happened? Today, I'm going to break down the claims, examine the evidence from both sides, explain why this matters far beyond the headlines, and reveal what it tells us about the current, very dangerous state of international relations. This is a story about accusations, denials, intelligence operations, and the thick fog of war in the modern age. Let's separate fact from speculation. Let me start with the basic facts as they've been reported. According to official statements from Moscow, their security services, the FSB, prevented a targeted action against a senior official or military figure. The incident allegedly occurred within Russian territory in recent days. Authorities claim they detained several individuals who were supposedly acting on behalf of Ukrainian intelligence services. They've presented what they describe as evidence, including intercepted communications, specialized equipment, and video confessions from the people they arrested. Of course, Ukraine has categorically denied any involvement. Their officials have dismissed the allegations as fabricated propaganda, a piece of theater designed to justify future escalation or simply to distract from other issues. They suggest this is part of a cynical information campaign, not factual reporting. International observers are quick to note this follows a pattern we've seen repeatedly. Both sides constantly accuse each other of sabotage, intelligence plots, and covert operations. Sorting truth from disinformation has become one of the hardest parts of covering this conflict. Here's what we can actually verify from open sources. The security announcements were made through official Russian government channels. State media covered the story wall to wall, providing specific details about the timing, the locations, and the alleged methods. They released photos and video footage showing the detained individuals and the materials that were supposedly seized. However, independent verification of these claims is extremely difficult, if not impossible. International journalists don't have access to the detained people. The alleged evidence hasn't been authenticated by any neutral party. And by their very nature, intelligence operations happen in the shadows, where hard proof is a rare commodity. This creates an information battlefield where multiple narratives compete for your belief. Official accounts from both Moscow and Kyiv directly contradict each other. Independent observers are left on the outside, looking in, unable to verify much of anything. And the timing of this is very significant. This accusation comes just as diplomatic efforts are supposedly underway and international attention is focused on potential negotiations. Whether this incident is genuine or manufactured, its timing is designed to shape perceptions and influence those diplomatic dynamics. Let me break down the specific accusations in more detail. According to Russia, their security services received intelligence about a planned operation targeting a specific, high-ranking individual. They claim this information came from multiple intelligence sources over a period of weeks. The alleged target, they say, holds significant military or government responsibility. Targeting someone at that level would be a major escalation beyond previous incidents. It would signal a willingness to take the fight directly to the leadership. The alleged plan involved individuals already operating inside Russia. These people supposedly conducted surveillance, gathered intel on the target's movements and security details, and were preparing to carry out the attack. Russian security forces claim they monitored these activities, gathered evidence, and then moved in to detain the individuals before the plan could be executed. The evidence they've shown publicly includes what they claim are intercepted communications showing coordination with Ukrainian intelligence handlers. They've also shown technical equipment for surveillance, personal items, and documents linking the individuals to Ukraine. And, most dramatically, they aired video confessions from the detained people, who described their mission, their recruitment, their training, and their handlers. However, there are huge red flags here. Confessions obtained in detention, especially in politically charged situations like this, must be viewed with extreme skepticism. History is filled with examples of coerced confessions. Without independent access to these individuals, we simply cannot verify the authenticity of what they're saying. The technical evidence, the equipment, the communications hasn't been examined by any independent experts. Photos and videos can be staged or manipulated. Without forensic analysis by a neutral party, that evidence carries very little weight. Let us be blunt. Intelligence services on all sides have the capability to create convincing false evidence. Ukraine's denial is just as categorical. They say they had no involvement whatsoever. They call the allegations complete fabrications designed for domestic political gain and international propaganda. Their counter-narrative suggests this is a manufactured incident. They point to the timing, which conveniently coincides with other developments that benefit Russia politically. They ask a simple question: why is this evidence only being shown on controlled state media instead of being open to independent verification? They also point to a pattern of similar accusations over the years, many of which were never substantiated and just quietly disappeared. This, they argue, suggests a systematic approach to information warfare, not a series of genuine security incidents. To really understand what's happening, we need some historical perspective. Targeted actions against officials are nothing new. During intense conflicts, these kinds of operations become more common as both sides look for an edge. This region has a long history of shadowy intelligence activities. In the current conflict, both sides have seen key figures targeted. Some of these incidents have been confirmed by multiple independent sources, but many others remain disputed, with competing narratives and no clear answers. This is characteristic of modern conflicts, where information itself is a primary weapon. International law is supposed to govern these things, but applying those laws to the messy reality of a hybrid war is incredibly complex. The Russian accusations, if true, would represent a significant escalation targeting a specific individual in a territory not under active combat operations crosses a major threshold. But of course, Ukraine argues that this framing is misleading. They point to documented incidents that they attribute to Russia. In their view, the accusations are selective and politically motivated. This creates a cycle where each side frames every incident to fit their narrative. One side calls it a defensive necessity. The other calls it unprovoked aggression. Let's look at the intelligence dimension. Intelligence services around the world operate on a spectrum, from passively collecting public information to running active operations like sabotage or targeted actions. Both Russia and Ukraine have significant intelligence capabilities. Covert action activities designed to influence events while hiding who's behind them is the most controversial part of this world. The accusation against Ukraine, if true, describes a classic covert action operation. Planning something like this requires extensive preparation, surveillance, logistics, recruiting personnel, and maintaining total secrecy. Operations like this can fail for many reasons. Maybe the target nation got a tip from a source inside the attacking service. Maybe they caught communications through technical surveillance. Or maybe the operatives on the ground just made a mistake. Russia claims a mix of these factors allowed them to stop this plot. But this narrative also serves their propaganda goals, whether it's true or not. It makes their security services look competent. It sends a threatening message to their adversary, and it builds political capital at home. Beyond the spy versus spy gains, this incident has huge political implications. For the Kremlin, it rallies the public around the flag and justifies their security measures. Internationally, it paints Russia as the victim, defending against unprovoked hostility. For Ukraine, denying the allegations is politically essential. Admitting to such an operation would have severe consequences, confirming their enemy's narrative. Their strategy is to attack the credibility of the accusation and frame themselves as the target of a smear campaign. This puts other countries in a tough spot. Western nations that support Ukraine have to balance that support with standards of evidence. They want to believe their ally, but they know propaganda is a real factor. This fragmentation of the international response is significant. What looks obvious in one country seems like blatant propaganda in another. The shared factual baseline we use to rely on in international diplomacy is crumbling. And this brings us to the heart of the matter: information warfare. In modern conflicts, how an incident is framed can matter more than the underlying facts. Both Russia and Ukraine are masters of narrative construction. Russia frames this as proof of Ukraine's malign intent. Ukraine frames it as a cynical fabrication, and each narrative finds a receptive audience. Social media then amplifies these competing realities, spreading unverified claims instantly around the globe. The result is an information battlespace where truth is the first casualty. Even if the facts eventually emerge, the initial narratives often stick. So, what are the broader international implications? This incident, whether it's genuine or fake, demonstrates the dangerous escalation dynamics in modern conflicts. If the accusation is true, it means a line has been crossed, normalizing the targeting of leadership figures. If the accusation is false, it means another line has been crossed, normalizing the manufacturing of serious allegations for political gain. Either way, international norms of behavior are deteriorating, and there's no trusted, neutral body that can step in, investigate, and determine the facts. This lack of accountability enables bad behavior on all sides. Ultimately, we are left in a state of uncertainty. Without an independent investigation, we cannot definitively determine the truth. But positions must be taken and consequences will follow, regardless of that uncertainty. This incident poisons the atmosphere for any potential peace talks. How can you negotiate when you can't even agree on basic facts? Yet, diplomacy must continue because the alternatives are far worse. The challenge is finding a path forward in an environment where trust is non-existent and truth itself is under assault. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into complex global issues. So what should we conclude from this complex situation? First, certainty is impossible without access to evidence and independent investigation that isn't occurring. External observers must acknowledge this fundamental limitation. Anyone claiming definitive knowledge about what happened is likely either partisan or insufficiently rigorous. The most honest assessment is, we don't know. The accusation could be true. It could be partially true with significant exaggeration. It could be completely fabricated. Available evidence doesn't allow confident determination by external observers. This uncertainty itself tells us something important about modern conflicts. The information environment is so degraded that establishing basic facts has become extremely difficult. This is an intentional result of information warfare strategies all sides employ. Second, regardless of truth about this specific incident, broader patterns are clear. Covert operations are occurring. Both sides conduct intelligence activities. Some operations succeed. Others are detected and prevented or fail for various reasons. The question isn't whether intelligence operations happen. They definitely do. The question is which specific allegations reflect reality versus propaganda. And without investigation capacity, answering that question reliably is often impossible. Third, information operations are as important as physical operations in modern conflicts. Shaping perceptions, controlling narratives, and influencing international opinion are strategic objectives receiving major resources and attention. This incident demonstrates sophisticated information warfare regardless of underlying facts. Timing of announcements, presentation of evidence, narrative framing, international messaging all show careful planning and execution of information strategies. Fourth, escalation dynamics are concerning. Whether through genuine incidents or manufactured ones, accumulation of such events creates escalation pressure. Each incident individually may be manageable. Collectively, they make situations more dangerous. The risk is that miscalculation, uncontrolled escalation, or deliberately provocative action triggers consequences nobody intended. When intelligence operations are ongoing, when information environments are poisoned, when trust is absent, controlling escalation becomes extremely difficult. Fifth, the institutional deficit in international systems for addressing such situations is problematic. No mechanisms exist for neutral fact-finding, authoritative determination of what occurred, or accountability for whoever is responsible, whether for actual operations or for false accusations. This creates permissive environment for bad behavior. Nations can act without accountability. They can make accusations without evidence requirements. The result is degradation of international norms and increasing difficulty of diplomatic resolution. Sixth, domestic political considerations drive much international behavior. Governments face internal pressures requiring them to appear strong, demonstrate threats from adversaries, and justify policies. This creates incentives for certain international behaviors regardless of strategic wisdom. In this case, the accusing nation gains domestic political benefits from these allegations, whether true or false. The accused nation gains from denial regardless of reality. Domestic politics often trump strategic considerations in determining how such situations are handled. Seventh, the human element shouldn't be forgotten amid geopolitical analysis. If genuine operation occurred, individuals risked or lost their lives. If fabricated, detained persons may be suffering for propaganda purposes. Either scenario involves real people experiencing real consequences. The tendency to view such incidents purely through strategic lenses can obscure human dimensions. Covert operations aren't abstract. They involve people making difficult choices under dangerous circumstances. Information operations aren't bloodless false accusations can destroy lives. Finally, the path forward remains unclear. Diplomatic efforts continue despite such incidents complicating them. Necessity drives search for settlements even when trust is absent. The alternative, continued or escalating tensions, serves nobody's long-term interests. Breaking cycles of accusation and counter-accusation requires mechanisms neither side currently accepts. Independent investigations, neutral verification, and accountability systems all depend on cooperation neither party is willing to provide. Yet somehow international community must facilitate progress. Major powers must use leverage to encourage de-escalation. Diplomatic channels must remain open despite provocations. Creative solutions must be found to seemingly impossible problems because the costs of failure are too high. Continued escalation risks catastrophic outcomes. The human suffering, already enormous, will worsen. International stability, crucial for global prosperity, will further deteriorate. This assassination attempt accusation, whether true, exaggerated, or fabricated, is one incident among many. But it illustrates dynamics that will determine whether the situation stabilizes or spirals further out of control. Understanding these dynamics, maintaining appropriate skepticism about competing narratives, and supporting diplomatic processes despite difficulties are responsibilities for all who care about international peace and security. The truth about this specific incident may never be definitively established, but the broader truth is clear. Current trajectories are unsustainable, continued escalation is dangerous, and finding paths toward de-escalation is urgent necessity.